Hello people of the internet, this is Kaiju Noir here with my review for The X from Outer Space, or Space Monster Guilala as it's known in Japan. The movie starts off in the Fuji Astronautical Flight Center, where we are introduced to our four main protagonists, Captain Sano, played by Toshiya Wazaki, Lisa, a space biologist, played by Peggy Neal, Dr. Shiota, played by Kisuke Sonoi, and Signal Officer Miyamoto, played by Shinichi Yanagisawa. During their mission briefing, we are told that their objective is to become the first people to successfully land on Mars. They must also investigate a strange UFO that had killed the previous crews who attempted to travel to Mars. As they travel in space, they eventually encounter the glowing UFO, which mysteriously causes Dr. Shiota to suffer from dehydration. After spending a good chunk of the film on a moon base to recuperate, the crew tries once again to travel to Mars, where they encounter the UFO yet again. This time, the UFO leaves dozens of spores on the ship's thruster and flies off. With most of their fuel wasted, the crew gets rescued and is sent back to Earth, but not before collecting one of the spores for study purposes. Unfortunately, the spore gains sentience and escapes its container, which soon grows into the giant monster Guilala once it's exposed to Earth's atmosphere. With Guilala on the loose, the crew must quickly find a way to defeat it before it destroys all of Japan. What separates The X from Outer Space with other Godzilla knockoffs was its space setting. The majority of the film is spent either in the moon base or in the ship that is used to travel to Mars. I theorize that the decision to have an interplanetary themed story was due to the success of Invasion of Astro Monster, a Godzilla movie that also dealt with space exploration. As nice as it is to see something new in this particular knockoff, what kills its story, as well as the movie as a whole, is its pacing. For long gaps in the film, the characters decide to take breaks between the action, where we see them eating, showering, dancing, playing, and having conversations between one another. The main purpose for these scenes was to build up a love triangle between Captain Sano, Lisa, and Michiko, played by Itoko Harada. The subplot involving these three characters takes up about 1/3 of the movie, and has no bearing on the main plot whatsoever. You see, what makes the love triangle in the original Gojira work was that whatever decisions the main characters made had a major impact on the plot and helped increase the drama. With no ties to the main story, the love triangle in this film just slows the story down and becomes completely uninteresting. By the second half of the film, when Guilala goes on its rampage, the movie finally starts to pick up the pace, but slowly starts to lose my interest. We see Guilala destroying a city, cut to the scientists working. Guilala destroys another city, scientists still working, rinse, lather, and repeat. After about 20 minutes of this repetition, we do get an interesting climax, but by then it's already too late for this movie. In terms of the characters, there really isn't anything special here save for one notable exception. That would be Lisa, who is pretty much the hero of this film. She's headstrong, very observant, and shows a great sense of ingenuity throughout the movie. Sano is the serious, no-nonsense captain that you've probably seen in a bunch of other movies. Dr. Shiota's main purpose here is to become the reason why the crew must travel to the moon, so we don't get much characterization out of him. Michiko is only here for the pointless love triangle and nothing else. Finally, Miyamoto is shown to be a hopeless romantic in the beginning, but not much is shown of him after that. As for the production values, they are very impressive for 60s Japanese kaiju films. The models, sets, and backdrops all look like they can compete with the effects from movies like Invasion of Astro Monster and Battle in Outer Space. Guilala's rampage is well executed, with the exception of one instance where buildings are exploding and all we hear are the sounds of fire burning wood. Sadly, by this point in kaiju history, most of what we've seen here has already been done before in countless other movies. These destruction sequences don't really add anything new to the genre, and as stated before, becomes uninteresting after a while. Even Guilala isn't all that interesting as a monster, since all he does is shoot fireballs and stomp about. It can turn into a glowing ball of energy, similar to its UFO parent, but it's only used once for about a minute. Speaking of Guilala, let's talk about his design, which has to be one of the most ludicrous I've ever seen in a monster movie. The creature looked like it came from an episode of any of the Ultraman series. Almost nothing about him makes sense. On the head alone, it's got a bird-like beak, large red eyes, saucer-like fins on the side, a curved horn in the back, 2 dealy bobber antennas, and one that looks like a snorkel tube. On the body, there are oddly proportioned arms and legs, pudgy fingers and toes with bright red claws, a claw at the end of the tail that is never used, and strange curvy lines all over its body. I can see why some might find Guilala appealing, but for me, its design is just too random and doesn't work for a serious kaiju film. The X from Outer Space is a very uneven film. On one hand, you have great special effects and at least one good protagonist, and on the other, you have horrible pacing, forgettable characters, and an odd-looking monster. At the end of the day, I have a feeling that most people who will watch this will only remember Guilala and nothing more. If you're that curious about watching it, then be my guest, but otherwise I wouldn't recommend it. 2 out of 5. So how does The X from Outer Space compare to its 2008 sequel, Monster X Strikes Back? Well, if I had to choose, I would prefer the later, since I think it actually works better as a parody than how the original works as a serious monster movie. Plus, I think Guilala's design fits the sequel's comedic tone. With that said, I'd like to thank everyone who has enjoyed my reviews for the last year, and I hope you'll continue enjoying what I have in store for the future. Until next time, everybody, take care.